Hello, I'm Cosmo Dad, and today we're going to talk about top toning mistakes. Toning is just a fancy way of saying you're changing the color of the hair by minimally affecting the level. So most systems have around a 1 to 10 system, and if I don't like the tone of my level 9 hair, I want it to be cooler, warmer, I'm generally going to use a demi-permanent color to try to shift the tone that it reflects without making it appear too much darker. There are a lot of misconceptions about toning hair out there and a lot of simple mistakes that it's really easy to make. So I'm here to help you avoid those mistakes. I've been teaching in the cosmetology industry for over 10 years. I've seen some mistakes that tend to repeat over and over again. Some of those mistakes are inevitable. Some of them are trial and error. It doesn't mean that you're a bad colorist, but I'm here to help you hopefully try to avoid some disasters and make your coloring adventures more predictable. So in just a minute, I'm going to show you my top toning mistakes. If you haven't been here before, welcome. If you're returning, thank you. Like, share, subscribe, comment. If you enjoy anything that you see on this channel, leave me a comment, leave me a like. That's the best thing that you can do to help other people find this channel. So let's talk about our top toning mistakes. In general, when we refer to toning, we're talking about toning on lighter level hair. Though you can absolutely tone darker hair, mostly we're not going to discuss that today. We're going to really talk about toning blondes, toning hair that's been pre-lightened. And for my first mistake in toning is toning to the wrong level. I see this happen all the time. As you lighten hair, you're going to see reds, oranges, eventually yellows, and then pale yellows, very similar to the progression that we're seeing right here. Often when the hair is wet, it's going to appear a little bit different than when it does when it's dry. And they'll see like a yellow orange, they'll tone it with like a 10 ash, and then nothing will happen. And they'll be like, oh, that toner was terrible. The thing is, a 10 ash is calibrated with as much pigment to neutralize the yellow up here without making it appear too dark. And if there's a lot of orange left in your hair, it's probably a 7 or an 8, and there's not enough pigment in a level 10 to tone a 7 or 8. It doesn't matter how much ash you put on that 7, 8, if it's a level 10, you are not going to see the results you want. So number one, tone to the proper level. Another common thing I see, toning an uneven canvas. Let's say you have a person with previous color on their head, and there's some new growth. And so you do whatever your highlighting technique is, it lightens up different on one side versus the other. So that means maybe up at the roots, you have like a level 910, but on the right after that line of demarcation where all that old color is, you've got like a level 8. Well, that is an uneven canvas, and it's going to be very difficult to tone that, even with one or multiple formulas. You have to try to visualize what you're going to get in the end. Because if I were to take this hair and look at all of that like level 8 yellow orange that's at the ends, and I put an 8 ash on there, then maybe that will neutralize all those level 8s there, and it'll bring it to this neutral 8. But what's it going to do to those 910s? It's going to turn them like blue or muddy because you're basically using the same color paint to paint two different color canvases. If you use too light of a toner, if you tone for that 910, then it's really not going to affect that 8 much, is it? You'll be back to mistake number one. Then to compound this mistake, I often see people try to use the maximum coolness on each level. So they use an 8A for the 8 and like a 9A for the 9, which is great, and you might get the optimal results for each of those colors, but they are not going to be the same color at the end of the day. So we have to treat them like two different color canvases and try to bring everything to the middle. Easiest way to do this is to just use a neutral toner. Don't use an ash, don't use a warm, just your darkest color. So that would be, if I'm dealing with a 9 yellow and a 8 yellow orange, I would choose a level 8 neutral. Because of the way color works, a neutral has every primary color in it. It's going to soften any tone. So if my yellow is too yellow, my orange is too orange, neutrals try to bring everything to the middle. By picking the level 8 neutral, it's going to bring down my 9. It's okay, we didn't want hot roots anyway. So unless we're going to lighten it again, we got the ends to 8, then our highlights are an 8. So by using that neutral, it's going to take the yellow that's too yellow, the orange that's too orange, and try to bring it to the middle. Once you've done that, you may get a really nice, beautiful tone. You may get the best possible scenario after that initial tone. But what it will do is even out your canvas and then get it ready for a second toner if you want to cool it down additionally. Be careful with that though, because that leads us into mistake number 3. Anytime that you are toning hair, you're adding color on top of a canvas, it's not going to make it lighter, it's always going to make it appear darker. And I know I've done videos about cool versus warm and how that reflects, but cool tones always absorb light, they're going to appear a little bit darker to your eye. If you, like in the last scenario, toned with a neutral first and wanted to cool it down further, and you're starting at a level 8, chances are by the time that you get done, your highlights are going to start looking more like a 7 because you've put multiple layers of color and you cooled them down a lot. Sometimes you have to decide on pre-lightened hair whether your goal is to be cool or light, and you don't always get to get both. So if you want to maintain the lightness, don't tone it too cool. If you've got enough lightness to support that cool, then go ahead and go for it. This is related, of course, to the 4th mistake I see, and that is toning up. This is related to the first one I mentioned and the last one I mentioned. There are some toners that are known as permanent toners. Wella makes some blonde or permanent toners. You may find actually one version that's really popular on the internet that you can find at Sally's is their T18. That's sort of the at-home version. These can lighten hair an additional amount. Not a ton, but a little bit. And that's a permanent color. They're very smelly, they're very strong. If you've bleached your whole head and then you tone with a T18, it can be very, very sensitive on your scalp. Permanent color has the ability to lighten hair, whereas demi-permanent, you really can't count on it. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's not intended to. It's just sometimes that's an unintended side effect as it lightens hair. But for the most part, unless you're using a specialized toner, you cannot tone up. If you have yellow-orange hair, which is generally around a level 8 or so, you can't optimistically tone with a 9 or a 10. It won't make your hair any lighter. So a lot of people will cross their fingers and say maybe, and they'll tone with a 9 or a 10, or they'll only get this light and all you've got at home is a 9 or a 10 toner. If something's labeled as a toner and it doesn't have a level, it's probably intended for levels 9, 10. And if all you get is an 8, your hair will not get any lighter with that toner unless it's a specialized permanent toner. This is just an indicator that if your hair has the integrity to stand it, that you should continue to lighten before you then try to cool it down from your yellow. And finally, one of the biggest mistakes I see toning is not understanding the scope of what toning is and neutralizing the tones that you actually want. When we think about changing the tone of hair to refine it with toning, most people think immediately remove warmth. Cool it down, let's use a violet, let's use an ash, and get rid of all the warmth we can. But what if you want a neutral tone to end? What if you want a golden blonde? I have seen people try to take a golden blonde, neutralize the gold, and then come back with more gold on top to get a more gold color. You're working way too hard. I think of it as like hair color judo. You know, one of the things you learn in like a self-defense class or in judo is to use your opponent's body weight or momentum against them to throw them or disable them. It's the same thing with hair color. If I want a golden result and I have gold here that I just need to soften, the last thing I want to do is come with a violet or an ash and get rid of all that gold and then try to put more in. You want to think about the color of your canvas versus your final result. Maybe all I need is a neutral to soften that gold and refine it. Maybe I need to come back with a 9 gold or a 9 neutral gold, or do some mixing of multiple tones and customizing, all while using that gold to my advantage. Not only does this make formulation easier, but it's going to make your final result last longer. Thank you for joining me today. I can't wait to see you next time. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe.